Miniature Market has thousands of board games at discounted prices. Click the direct link below to see all of those discounted games. Hello my friends, today we're going to be looking at all sorts of different things like castles and bathtubs and rats and comets, and we're going to be putting them in different rings, like of the same letter twice, it moves, it's found in a house. So today we're looking at a lighter party style game called Things in Rings. It's a deduction game actually. This was my number 2 in my most anticipated games at Origins. I just got back from the game fair. If you haven't seen that video, you can go check that one out on my channel. But let me show you how this works. I'll see you on the other side. In Things in Rings, there's going to be all sorts of different things like museums and milkshakes and bats and earrings and IDs and idols. And they're going to be being placed sometimes together, sometimes separately, and you're going to be trying to deduce what the rules are for the game. Now those rules are going to have to do with these 3 circles in this Venn diagram, red, blue, and yellow. Now the red ring is all about context, which is about the position or use of the object in society. So examples are, makes a good gift, related to sports. Attribute is about the physical properties of the object, the blue ring, and that's like, contains metal, has moving parts. And the yellow is all about the word, about the spelling or structure of the word, like, starts and ends with the same letter, or has 3 syllables, or something like that. Now the game can be played competitively or cooperatively. Either way, one player knows the rules, the other knower. Now between those 3 different types of things, the context, word, and attribute, there's levels. There's easy, there's medium, there's difficult. There's a ton of cards of each level for each of these rings. Right now I'm showing you an easy, and medium, and difficult just to show you, the cross-section of it. So one player will get to look at these. So for the context, the rule is going to be you expect to find it in a school. The medium word is going to be has 4 or fewer unique letters, and the attribute, this is a difficult one, typically the same size. Now usually you play with the same level for all 3 cards, but I'm kind of showing you the differences between some of the easier ones and harder ones. So they know that these are the rules. So each player is going to get 5 of these things cards, and so is the knower, and the knower is going to seed the board with 3 cards. Now there's also a space called none, which is like way out. It does give us some information. So for example, if the knower wanted to seed the board with a windmill, well, it doesn't have 4 unique letters. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 5. It has more than that. And do you expect to find it at school? No. Is it typically the same size? Not really. There's not a really typical size of a windmill. There's all different sizes. So it's not any of these. So I would put it out by the none. That would be like one of mine. Now maybe we place out a hammer, right? Do I expect it to find it at school? Not really. Is it 4 unique letters? No, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 actually. Typically the same size? Yeah. So in this case, it's only the blue. So I'm going to place it here, which shows it's only with the blue and not with some of the others. Now obviously keep in mind, these are secret. Only the knower can see these, but I'm doing this for the video. Now look at this one. ID has 4 or fewer unique letters. Yes. Typically the same size. Sure. They're usually around the same size. Do you expect to find it at a school? Well, these days, yes. And this is where you see that there's a lot of things for interpretation. Do people have IDs at school? Well, these days, a lot of them are using it, right? And they have, maybe there's IDs, maybe for the teachers, maybe for the students, but I have seen that more. So this is where I might say yes, and this is where it's like, well, it's a little vague. And these are purposely vague because it's going to be all about interpretation. So in this case, I'm going to place it right here. This is right in the middle of the Venn diagram, which means, yes, it's within the red ring, it's within the blue ring, it's within the yellow ring. So I've seeded the board, given them some information, and then what happens is each player in clockwise order will play a card. So one of the players goes, hammer, let's put a chainsaw in there. And probably for not the reasons that they are thinking, they're thinking like tools or metal or something like that, this actually does belong here because it doesn't have 4 or fewer unique letters. I wouldn't expect to find it in the school, but I guess, yeah, generally speaking, they do come in about the same size. And so that's there. So now everyone's going to be like, Now, if they were correct like this, they get to play another card. And you're trying to run a card. You start with 5. Whoever runs out first wins. So then they place another card. So they place iron. They're like, metal, tools, stuff like that. Now, let's see. Yes, an iron typically comes in a single size. That's right. Do you expect to find it in school? No. But does it have 4 unique letters? Yes, it has 4 or fewer unique letters. So it also is the yellow word. So the knower will take it and move it to where it's supposed to be. Here, it's not in the red circle, but it's in the yellow, it's in the blue. So it follows the word rules, follows the attribute. So now these people are all confused, I'm sure. And that's typically what happens. And then that player has to draw another card. right? So they don't go down a card. They had, you know, they were down one from the chainsaw. They had to draw one. It goes to the next player. So that's it. You play a card. If it's right, you play another one. You keep playing them until you're wrong. You draw a card. Whoever runs out of cards first wins. That's pretty much how the game's played. Now, there is a cooperative mode, which I actually like the best, where the knower will actually get 10 cards. And they still seed the board with 1 card per player, essentially. And then they're in turn order. And so players might play a card, then another player plays a card, let's say they were wrong, the other player's wrong, comes back to the knower. They place one as normal. They place a card that they want in the right spot, and they have 10 cards to start with, again, and they're going to seed the board with a certain amount. And if they run out of cards and have to place one before all the other people run out, you lose. So you're trying to get everyone else to run out of cards before you, and the big difference here is the other players can all talk and share strategies. They can't share what cards they have, but they talk, and as the knower, you're listening to them talk, and you're trying to push them in the right way, and you get a lot of feedback. And that's a 2 to 4 player cooperative version. All right, so my biases here, as I mentioned in the intro, this was my number 2 most anticipated game going into Origins, in my Origins review, my Origins video. And the reason being is because deduction games are like my favorite genre ever. But not a lot of people, I found, like deduction games. And so I find myself having a hard time finding people to play these games with. So when a game like this comes around, it's like, oh, it's a light party game. I can almost trick the masses into playing a deduction game with me, and they're gonna have fun too. That's why it was so high on my list. So let's talk about the things I liked about it. This is a lighter party style deduction game. And I like that. I like it when there's some deduction with something that I can bring to the masses, and that's what this thing does. You're constantly testing theories. So as I showed in that thing, like, okay, you put the hammer in there and it sticks. You put the chainsaw in there, it sticks. You put the iron in there, it gets moved. And you're like, huh, okay, well, it can't be this. Well, what is different about the iron from this? Well, the word's different, right? The other things might have been the same, but the word is different. You know, then you start trying to like triangulate, well, okay, well, let's change one of these variables. We think it fits this, but it's a different word. Let's try, you know, and you're constantly like doing this testing of these theories. And there's no downtime in this game, right? Because if it's not your turn, you're watching what people are placing where, you're watching whether it's right or whether it gets placed in the right spot, and you're learning info on everyone's turn. Deduction games are always best when you learn something on everyone's turn, and this does that. That's like a baseline of a great deduction game. One of the best things about it, and this is why I say it's a lighter party game, it kind of is, because party games are more about the experience and the discussions and the memories that you make than the actual gameplay. And this is definitely like that for me. Like when you end the game, because the knower has all this information and they can't say anything, and you're like, oh, like I was the knower in one of the games, in one of the co-op games. And one of the word thing was like 1 syllable, right? And for some reason, like I put some cards out there and someone was like, oh, 1 syllable. And then I put a shield down. And one of the players was like, no, shield's 2 syllables, right? Shield. And I'm going, I had to sit there quietly instead of going, what are you, an idiot? Shield's 1 syllable. What is wrong with you? And it like deterred them the entire game, and they could not figure it out until finally towards the end, they're like, they Googled it and like, oh, shield is 1 syllable. Oh, you know. And so like the discussions afterwards are always fun because I'm like, I get to say like, do you know how it was to sit on my hands and not call you the biggest idiot on the face of the earth? You thought shield was a 2 syllable, you know. It was just, and he's a really close friend of mine, so it's great. You see him on the channel all the time. Sorry, Greg, I outed you, but everyone knows you. So that is, you know, the fun is the discussions afterwards. The other thing is the pleasant surprise here is that I actually like the cooperative version better. Now that version is only 2 to 4 players, so if I want to play with a little bit more players, I'll play the normal version. If I play 2 to 4 players, I'm always playing the co-op version. I like the co-op version better because during the game in the competitive variant, everyone is thinking, but it's very quiet. There's literally like nothing said the entire game. Everyone is just playing a card, they're thinking, they're trying to hope they know something that someone else doesn't know, and they're trying to be tricky and sneaky and things like that. Cooperative, it's like you can't talk about your cards, but you can talk about theories. And listening to those theories as you're the knower, which some people are like, oh, you're just running the game. No, you're not. You're seeding the board at the beginning, which is very important. But then you're trying to distill some of these answers because a lot of them are vague purposely. And in the co-op version, you're listening to them And it's even better for that, for the knower that, because you're listening to what they're saying, you're listening to what they're thinking, and that feedback, like many co-op games where there's one person doing something, like Mysterium or something like that, or Rear Window, like you're listening to them talk about what cards you put out there with artwork and stuff, and you're changing depending on that. So I like the co-op version because they're working together. You're hearing it, and it's still tense, and it always comes down to the battle. So I actually like the co-op version best. It works great. On the negative side of things, look, what makes the game sing is that things are purposely vague and that it's down to interpretation a lot of times. Well, like in my other thing, ID in the video, ID. Would you have put ID is normal in a school? When I was in school, it was not, because I'm old. But these days, I know that lots of schools, kids have ID, so like you have different perspectives. But interpretations, even though it does sort of make the game, it also can throw people off. And it can also make it harder. It can also make it like, well, if they thought that in the back of their head, oh yeah, clearly that's that. But you interpret it a different way, they're gonna be thrown off with their deductions in a different way. Now, not so much like in a normal deduction game where someone gives you a wrong answer or something like that, it screws the entire game for you and you're basically out. Here, like, it just kind of throws you off your path and you can continue to try to learn and you'll continue to be questioning it. But it definitely brings the experience down, I think, for sometimes when the interpretation's like too much differently. The other thing is, the biggest issue I have with the game is the card difficulty. Between level 1 to level 3, I think they're all over the board. Like twice we had level 1 cards that were like, really? That was a level 1 card? And I've looked at a few level 3s, I'm like, that one's way easier. Like level 1, we had one that was useful. Like the whole game, it's like, oh my gosh, what is useful? Is the ocean useful? Well, the ocean, it's useful to some animals, right? And it comes down to a point where like almost everything in that deck was useful, right? So everything was going in the red ring that game. I think it was a red card, right? And it just like really made things really weird. But then sometimes you have things that are like almost never right. Like one of them was like, has one or more holes. Like, so almost nothing went in there. So sometimes things are like very exclusive, some things are too inclusive. And those are all on level 1 cards that made things really hard. So I'm sad. This is what I say. Don't care about the levels. They're all over the place. Shuffle the deck up. Pick one of each of the cards. If one of them looks like this is weird or this is just going to be a whole interpretation nightmare, throw the card away and get another one. I highly recommend that because in a couple of games we did not do that, and like some of the ones like that, and it really brought the experience down because you're playing a long, in a co-op game, it can be a little bit longer as people discuss stuff, and at that point, it's like, the experience was really brought down because that card was just a little too weird, right? So I don't have any problem. It's not in the rules. Take one of any of the cards. Doesn't matter the rules. If it looks weird, throw it out and get a new one. Do something that you're like, okay, these are cool, right? Because there's enough of the rules out there that are like, you'll have plenty of games. It will make the experience a lot better, but the fact that the game is, I think, a little bit fragile because of that can hurt it. But now that you've watched this, if you follow this, I don't think you'll fall into some of the pit traps we did. I also would like to see an advanced version. I could easily make this myself, that for each level of cards, in case you're actually playing by the rules and saying doing all the right cards with the right rules, right levels, I would like to see an advanced version that has a list of all the possible rules that are in there. Now I know that this would cause AP for most people. That's why I would call this an advanced version. But like, if you know you're only using level 1 cards, like one of the cards I had, I was one of the guessers in this game. It was 5 or less letters. Okay, so the first few cards were all 5 letters, and they kept going in the yellow ring only. And I'm like, oh, it's gonna be 5 letters, right? Then we put one that was less than 5 letters, and it also went in there. And we're like, huh? And for some reason we didn't grasp it. But like, it would have been awesome if I had like a sheet that saw, okay, here's all of the things that this possibly could be. I would have went, oh, you know what? It's 5 or less letters, right? It just gives you an idea of like, what could this be? Right? And then it's actually a little bit more of a strategic deduction game than just like I don't even know how to explain it. Like, it's just very like eccentric, like pick something out of the air type of thing. Now this was inspired, I think, by Zendo, which was a deduction game that was even more vague than this. But I would, personally, I might print out a list of those just for my own crazy deduction brain and be like, what are the possibilities here? Now I know what to test and how to test things a little bit more methodically. I don't know if you might like that, but it's something that I would like. But overall, I think if you follow my instructions and make sure you don't get bad draws and make the game have, be a little bit more fragile than it should be, I think you're gonna have fun with it. Because it is a party game, it is a light game. With those caveats, I think you'll enjoy it, and that is things in rings. Game Toppers upgrades every game you play, and they'll be launching their 4.5 Kickstarter this July, which will introduce the new Galactic Minecraft and Watson Game Toppers, as well as new game mats, miniature gaming terrain packs, leg kit options, dining covers, accessories, and amazing package deals. Their summer sale is running right now, and you can get 15% off all accessories and premium game mats at GameToppersLLC.com.